Howdy, everyone. Welcome. Today is Tuesday, August 24th, 2021, and the time is 6 p.m. We're here for the regular session of the Coppell City Council. There is a quorum present with 2 members coming in by Zoom, so I will call the meeting to order, and we will be moving to the first floor conference room for a work session, and the public is invited. Thank you.
His scenery kind of reminds me of somebody else we know that was in Colorado.
World Travelers.
Yeah.
I think this is a one-upsmanship.
Don't worry, we're keeping Coppell safe while you guys are traveling the world and stuff. It's in good hands.
This is torture, man. I'll take order. The time is 5:31 and we're moving into work session. Welcome, everyone. We do not have an executive session today, so we're going to go straight into the agenda items. 2A is regarding the agenda. Does anybody have any questions, comments, or anything else on our agenda for tonight? No? All right. Hey, Don, you and John, you guys are in a little teeny tiny square on the TV, so speak up real loud if you have anything to say, because it's going to be hard to see you.
Because your picture's small.
Yeah, your picture's very small.
Yeah, you're very small also.
Thank you very much.
I have nothing else for that.
All right. And John, your background is, never mind. So thanks for joining us remotely, by the way, guys. Item B is discussion regarding the social media. Ms. Hannah.
So good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you so much for having me tonight. Actually, how do I pull up the presentation?
No, you go ahead and advance. It might just happen.
Oh, so now it's going to go forward like 6
Yeah.
months.
Help, please.
There we go. Okay.
Thank you. You're welcome.
So as you know, I've been working to draft a social media policy. So I wanted to spend some time tonight to give you a little bit of background and then also walk you through the proposed policy. Tonight I am just looking for feedback and direction, so not asking you to consider anything for approval. So first, let's start with the basics. Who does this policy apply to? This policy would apply to our elected officials, i.e. council, our city council appointed boards, and our council appointed commissions and committees. Our employee handbook does include a section on social media that covers employees, so they are not included in this policy. What does the document include? The policy includes guidelines and recommendations, as well as some best practices regarding social media use. So what exactly are we talking about? What is social media? Social media is defined as websites and apps that enable users to create and share content or to participate in social networking. So this is by no means an extensive list, but social media includes things like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Nextdoor, but it can also include other internet postings and other e-communications. Why am I asking you to take a look at this proposed policy tonight? The primary reason is to better align with the Public Information Act. And then the next 3 points are really related to one another: to allow for more consistent communications, to to protect the city's brand and reputation, and to more transparently identify city officials. So we want to clearly identify our official spokespeople and clearly identify official city messaging. And then finally, I'm working to modernize the Community Information Office. So I'm working to take a look at all of our strategies and all of our policies, to take a look at where we are today, where we want to be in the future, and then what needs to be done to get there. So this is one component of that. Under the policy, elected officials, city council appointed boards, committee, and commission members may maintain and use personal websites, blogs, and social networking sites. Any content posted on these sites must not be in violation of existing city laws, policies, directives, rules, or regulations. The right to express one's thoughts and ideas on social media should not interfere with the operation and governance of the city. So all of that really is to say that elected and appointed officials have the First Amendment right to free speech, but this right is not absolute when involving matters of official city business. So in essence, the policy reminds elected officials and appointed officials that there are special considerations that come into play when it comes to posts about city business. Any city business or communication that is conducted as a city official from a personal or professional account is considered to be public record. So before I go any further, I want to pause and go over some terms and definitions. So specifically, what is a personal account versus a professional account versus a candidate account? And I'm going to add a little disclaimer here. I'm going to try my hardest to stick to the word account, but just in case I slip up on that, please know that for our purposes this evening, an account is the same as a page, is the same as a profile. So each platform has slightly different terminology, but for our purposes, all three of those are the same. Let's start with a personal account, which is my account. This is typically what you think of when you think of social media. On an individual's personal account, you can post updates, post photos and videos, maintain a friends list, provide personal information, and share interests. This is really a place to share news with your family and friends. Personal profiles are intended strictly for individual people and are not meant for commercial purposes. So in this example, this is Jen Psaki, who is the press secretary for the White House. This is her personal profile. And if you'll note in her username or her handle up at the top, her username is @JRPsaki, so that is her name. So this is her personal profile. She does have a former position listed, but this is not an official professional page. It's her personal profile. So a professional account, on the other hand, is a place where artists, public figures, businesses, brands, and nonprofits can connect to their constituents, fans, customers, etc. So on Facebook, these accounts are actually called pages, which is where my disclaimer comes into play a little bit. So if you'll notice in these examples, this is Duke, the dog mayor, and Mayor Lincoln, the goat. So in these examples, they are identified as their position. I spent a lot of time figuring out which images I wanted to use for this. So while personal profiles are typically associated with a person, professional profiles are typically associated with the position, the office, or the seat. So in this example, this is Governor Greg Abbott's professional profile. If you'll notice that in his username or his handle, it's @GovAbbott. And then he even goes so far as to put in his bio, the little description there, that this page or account is official news from the office of the Texas governor. And then he even lists out his personal feed. So there's no confusion over which is professional and which is personal.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
That makes the delineation very clear. Was that done on purpose, or was that just a happenstance that it happened that way?
The example from Governor Abbott?
Yeah,
That was just by happenstance.
okay, thank you.
So my assumption is they have done that for this similar reason. So a campaign account is a little bit different from either of the other two. A campaign account is a place for somebody running for office, an incumbent or otherwise, to share information about their platform and views and to encourage votes. So in these examples, this is Freddie the cat for mayor and Logan for dog mayor. So they are running for a position. Mixing campaign and constituent communications from the same account could put you at risk for violating election laws. So for that reason, we recommend that if you have a campaign account, it is kept separate from an official, professional, or personal account. Now that we have that baseline, I want to circle back to why I'm bringing you this proposed policy tonight for your feedback and direction, not for consideration of adoption. So primarily to better align with the Public Information Act, but then we also want to make sure that we have consistent communication, and this policy will help allow us to protect the city's brand reputation, and will also help our residents to identify city officials more easily. And then finally, we're working to modernize the department and set ourselves up for where we want to be in the future. Under the Texas Public Information Act, public information is defined as information that is written, produced, collected, assembled, or maintained under a law or ordinance or in connection with the transaction of official business by or for a governmental body or by an individual officer or employee of a governmental body in the officer's official capacity, and the information pertains to official business of the governmental body. So under this liberally construed law, which is actually written in the law, this chapter shall be liberally construed. So under this liberally construed law, social media posts from elected and appointed officials that relate to official city business are considered to be public information or public record. So with that background, what does the policy itself actually say? Under the policy, elected officials may not disclose confidential or privileged information, engage in any activity or conduct that violates any laws, use social media to circumvent election or campaign requirements, or delete posts or comments regarding city-related matters. And so this last point is particularly important due to the Public Information Act. So for example, if a resident was ever interested in seeing all posts related to a specific subject, and that subject was official city business, we would need to have access to all of those records in order to produce them. And so if we have a deleted post, we no longer have access to that record. So it's very important that no comments or posts get deleted. Elected officials should conduct themselves in a professional manner, be honest and accurate when posting information, quickly correct any mistakes, and be mindful that posting content could inadvertently result in violation of the Open Meetings Law. So if we had enough members of City Council commenting on the same post, that could inadvertently violate Open Meetings Law. Now, the policy recommends that elected officials separate personal social media accounts from professional social media accounts. If you'd like to communicate official city business to constituents via social media, we recommend that you create a professional account. By doing this, city-related matters and all public records generated from these posts are easily archived, and so we have them available for public information requests. And this also helps us to avoid any city-related info being intermingled with personal posts. If a professional account is created, it should be archived. And then also, the policy recommends that elected officials consider the potential impact of social media statements prior to posting, and that elected officials be mindful that members of the public come from all walks of life. If elected officials receive social media inquiries to personal accounts, we recommend that you tag the City of Coppell's official pages to offer a response. So for example, on Twitter, you could say tagging City of Coppell so staff can respond to you directly. By doing this, the resident gets the info that they're looking for, so we get everybody's needs met, but it keeps city business off of your personal account, page, profile. So next steps. Tonight I am just asking for direction and feedback. So if I get the direction that you would like to proceed in this direction with pursuing a social media policy, I will take any feedback that you have. revise the policy, and then come back at a later date to present that to council for consideration of adoption. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
So we adopt the policy, what happens when it's violated? Is there any teeth to this, or is it, oh, you shouldn't do that, and you get a little slap on the hand?
That would be, I would defer to council for that direction.
I mean, are we putting something in place that's really just gonna be scoffed at?
We can amend the ethics ordinance and make it a violation of your ethical obligation if you intentionally violate the policy, which could result in you being dismissed from the council, or admonished, spanked, censored.
I don't want that.
So there is a mechanism if you choose to do so, to make there be a sanction. Because your point is if there's no sanction, then what's the benefit of having the policy?
Does that apply to the boards and commissions as well?
Yes. Good. To be an ethical violation for the boards and commissions. They're under the same ethics ordinance you all are.
That's a good question. I like that. But you're right. You know, you got to have some teeth to it, or it's meaningless. Anybody have a question, but I'll defer till everyone else has gone around. Kevin?
So I liked in the presentation when you talked about was it the personal, the candidate, and then the professional? Is that particular piece outlined in this policy, or is that just part of the presentation? I didn't see those particular three categories there. I like that a lot.
Correct, yes. I believe the professional account, personal account, candidate account, or campaign account is listed, but it is not defined in the policy. So those definitions are not in there, and that would be something that we would.
I'd really like to see that in there. I think that helps kind of clarify specifically what is what. So, and then a follow-up, if you don't mind. I'll tell you kind of what I did. I'm trying to think through like real life workflow on what this is. So I created a campaign account, got a bunch of followers on Facebook and stuff like that, and helped get my messaging out for my campaign. When I got elected, I converted it to a professional account and did that. So based on that, are you recommending we not do that? Because all the people that liked me and followed me for the campaign now are linked into that. So there's just a concern about, now do I have to create a third account and get all those people so they can hear, if I push out information about what's going on, obviously keeping the personal and the professional separate. So that would be a concern I would have, is that I think a lot of people do that, is they would create, gather followers and then convert it over to a professional account.
Right. That's a very good point. As far as I know, there would not be an issue doing that. However, I would want to defer to Bob on campaign election laws. I'm not fully sure.
If I were you, I'd keep the election account and keep it separate. And then have a link to your other account, like the governor did. But you need to keep that separate, because if you then start to run for re-election, now you've got this jumbled account where if you could have that other account open and available for that. Because I assume y'all never stop running. So,
For my wife or
for office. And so it's a way to keep those things separated so you don't inadvertently use that account for election purposes and violate the election law. If they're separate, and then you have a link over. So I think you're better off instead of trying to switch back and forth and forget and you announce, and then the next day you got a bunch of people doing campaign stuff on your professional profile account and how that gets supported, and then you can have an inadvertent violation of contribution and all the stuff for the election law.
So hoping that I just didn't incriminate myself on anything, is there the fact that it's already done? I mean, because this is
Well,
The
you
layman
can
doesn't
still-
know any of this stuff, so.
Yeah, you can still recreate the account and just put a link over to it.
Well, there we go.
I'm very glad that I deferred
You just-
Bob for that reason.
You just indicated your innocence in not knowing, so that's
There we
been
go.
recorded, so.
Ignorance is bliss. There we go.
Tell that to the police chief.
Yeah.
Chief.
Chief ain't gonna arrest him for
Sammy's
election.
back there, and the chief lives right here, so now you've spilled it.
But honestly, even having that particular piece in like a, the newly elected, or no, the orientation, the candidate orientation, I think that's huge stuff, because not knowing any of that, I think it's great for people to know.
Before, you had a section on confidential and privileged information.
Yes, sir.
I think it would be helpful to give some examples maybe on what, we clearly cover confidential information here.
Mhm.
And then privileged information is a little different, and it might be good to give some examples about what those two might be.
Okay.
Well, one of the examples, anything goes on in executive session, don't say, hey, we discussed in executive session yesterday that, or if you get information that is pushed to you through Mindy,
Oh, no.
and through Mike, don't discuss this with anyone and then post that same information. I wouldn't think you would send the email, but you may inadvertently say something that you learned, and that's one of those things that is very tricky for you to not hear something and then not repeat it. You can't just say, I never heard it, I did hear it. And so you have to be very careful, obviously, with that, but we could write some examples for it. And privileged information maybe that Mike may share something that's confidential, basically from the police department with you, because you need to know. Clearly, that shouldn't be published.
It's not truly confidential, but it is
It's not
privileged.
truly confidential, but it may be privileged because of the circumstances. People may get hurt if you repeat it.
Bijou?
Yeah, and I'm trying to understand the reason we need a policy. Did somebody violate the policy, or did we violate did any city council member did something in the social media rise to this level to have a policy? Or do we have surrounding cities have these type of policies? Can you explain, please?
Yes, sir. So no, there was no particular incident that occurred that brought this up. This is really something that my office, I've been taking a look at at everything that we do, from our strategies to policies that we do have in place or don't have in place, and just working to make sure that we're set up for where we want to be in the future. And so doing research for this, I did conduct research nationwide and also within Texas to see what other cities are doing, if other cities have policies. So I looked at the forums and resources on many of the professional organizations that I'm a part of to see what other cities were doing, and found that the city of Durham, North Carolina, has what is considered to be the gold standard social media policy in the nation. And so what I'm presenting to you tonight is largely based on that policy. And so once I had that in mind, I did go back and talk to other cities in Texas to see what they were doing, what they were thinking. Out of 35 cities that I surveyed, 8 responded back. About half have a policy in place currently, and the other half are looking to see what happens here tonight, because they are looking into it.
So, follow-up question, just Carrollton, Irving, Louisville, Great Point, any of them have policies?
I don't believe any of those cities answered my request. So Cedar Hill, Dallas, Richardson, and then it's not in our area, but Leander has a policy.
Thank you.
Cedar Hill does.
Yes. And Farmers Branch is one of the cities that's looking into it, as well as Keller and Allen.
Wait, who was that? The 4 that have it?
The 4 that have it: Cedar Hill, Richardson, Dallas, and Leander. And so other cities might have a policy, and they just did not respond to my survey.
One of the things, the reason that a lot of cities don't have policy, and I can say this because I'm old, I don't have a social media account. I don't want a social media account. No one needs to know about my personal life. So the generation below you are much more sophisticated and use that much more often. So I would dare say there's people my age don't have all those things. There are probably some. So as councils get younger and people are more social savvy and media savvy with social media, it's become an increasing problem. I get phone calls. There's not a day go by that I don't get a phone call from a city manager, a mayor, or a councilman about they want to post something, have posted something, someone's posted something to them. So it's becoming an issue that we need to be prospective in giving you guidance instead of having to worry about tracking me down or the manager or Hannah down. If we have a policy, then you've got some safe harbors. We try to provide you all stay out of harm's way. So that's all this really is. I don't know that anyone's done anything too egregious yet. Certainly not here, but you know, there's a certain amount of people who get in trouble just by stepping outside. You know, so try to give you as many tools as possible so that you don't involve things. You know, the other part of this is not only the platforms that you use, it's the devices that you use them on. And, you know, we've talked about that. Once you start using your business laptop and your business phone and your personal computer and start using these platforms, now those devices are now subject to inquiry from Ms. Ashley's office. We get an open records request. So I want you to, if you do use those things, we try to encourage you not to if the city provides those things to you. But if you do is keep a folder of everything. So you keep segregated so that if someone asks, all you have to do is send us a folder and you don't have to come by and pick up your computer to send them out the AG's office.
Kevin?
I guess one thing that would, I think, help would be if, I know there are certain communications that we get, you know, from city manager's office and things like that. You know, I think that if we kind of have a general understanding of, like, you know, our tidbits email that we get, is that generally something that, you know, things that we can share, or is that typically categorized as I forgot to write it down, but you had the class, what was privilege? Yeah, so understanding maybe the baseline of that type of communication lands here, and then, you know, maybe something within that is marked more severe, like this is, you know, or maybe less severe that we can share. I think that might help give certain people, you know, guidance about what they feel comfortable sharing or not sharing, or what they're allowed to. I know that is more work on city staff, and I know that that's a burden, but I know that at least with me being new in this position, having that little guidance and that reassurance that I'm not stepping outside of my lane and doing something illegal is helpful. And I may think that I'm just trying to do the right thing by sharing out information, but, you know, or letting people know about what's going on, but just having that guidance from the, you know, departments. And I think about Mindy's department a lot, like understanding what we can and can't share, or are being advised what not to share, I think would be helpful.
Okay.
But if
Thank
you
you.
put it in an email, it's already in public record, right?
Unless it's privileged confidential. So we'll have that debate with the AG's office.
Yeah.
Yeah, once you create an email, you create an email. That's why people say, how come you don't email me? And I go, because they never want to see my name at the Attorney General. I know I make staff crazy sometimes because they email me stuff and I call them. And I don't have to worry about confidentiality. I don't have to worry about creating an attorney's log. And I get my business done. So it's the same thing. Once you do email someone, you've created a public record for sure. Now, it may be exempt from disclosure, but you have created public records.
I think that the big concern here is the speed at which social media happens. You know, like with when you create an email, that is, you know, a public record and things like that. But if it's, you know, maybe, you know, social media can happen like that. You know, take the content of an email, you retweet it, you post it out on your Facebook page, and that gets out a lot faster. Whereas like an open records request would take time and things like that. And I know, and you've got the other things as well. So I think that's the biggest concern, is that if I have information, what what am I being advised to do with that information? Is it just sit on it and ponder, or is it like, is this something that the community needs to know about that's a big deal? I think that type of guidance is I think the big piece of this.
Yeah, the social media, once it hits Twitter or Facebook, it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
There ain't no putting that back in the tube. And so you may have lost your ability to find it. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Don.
Speak up.
So I'll give my 2 cents. I do think we need to start developing, whether it's policy or guidelines or whatever we end up starting with. I do think we need to start going down this path. I think Kevin hit on it. I think there has to be some level of expectations, even when our boards and commissions, they have to go through. I think they have to go through the Open Meetings Act or public information. I forget which training they have to go through, but they go through some of those. But I don't know that sticks with them exactly what's a real life scenario for where they could potentially get in trouble by revealing something that came out of one of the boards or commissions or city council. People new to city council may have the same issues. Employees, Hannah, you and your team, you're probably very well aware of what to say or not to say or when to say it, right? Just because you live with it all the time. But those of us that maybe don't live with it all the time, I think do need guidance. I do think Mark made a very good point. If it doesn't have teeth in it, as far as what are you going to enforce, I guess it becomes, I don't even know what you would, it's certainly not a criminal thing. I don't know if it's a civil thing or if it's just the council takes you back into the back alley and reprimands you. I don't know what the penalty is for enforcing it, but even if you didn't have something that was enforceable to begin with, I do think it's important to start getting guidelines out there and start setting expectations in a world where information travels so quickly and unfortunately so off the cuff at times. I think we do need to set expectations, what you should say or shouldn't say or when you should say it or not. So that's for my 2 cents for what that's worth.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I want to, you have the benefit of having Mike and Hannah and Ashley and me at all your meetings. That's not true for the library board or the parks board. So now you leave it on staff to then try to manage the liaison. And I think you need to have a policy for your boards and commissions because maybe they're watching tonight, but they will get this because you instruct them and because you have a policy. And so it's really important because if we have trouble in some other garden spots that I go, it's because the boards and commissions start saying things. They hear stuff from staff, they go to their board meeting, and then they're off and running and say that we're going to have a new facility when staff is just trying to get input from them. Is that something we want to talk to council about? And the next thing you know, we're building a football stadium. So that's how that stuff starts. And so you really, for your boards and commissions, probably need this even more than you do for yourself. Because you at least have us to help you. You have more access to us, and so you have to live with this more often. So, to Don's point, it's a good observation.
Kevin?
I think, again, I'll kind of echo what people, I really do like Mark's thought about, what kind of teeth it has, but I would also maybe have us consider, maybe like, an ignorance clause, if you will, or something like that, like, hey, new guys trying to learn this stuff, I made a mistake, versus like maybe a gross negligence or, really getting out there and trying to be very deliberate about things. So I don't know how to finesse that at all in any way, so good luck trying to figure out.
That's why you have a city attorney.
I'll get some weasel words for you.
There we go, perfect. But I do think, because I this is very close to me just because I am new on the council, so I try to think about, like, obviously I know personally I'm trying to come in with good intentions and stuff, but you don't know what you don't know, so I want to make sure that we're not painting ourselves in a corner with a policy or a consequence that might be so severe where we just didn't know. So that would be my only caution on that. But I do like the merit and spirit of that. So,
Brianna?
Sorry, I missed some of the comments, and apparently what you said was amazing, so I'm sorry I missed it, 'cause I probably would have agreed with you.
It changed our lives.
I will say, like, I've never really been a fan of putting policies in place if we don't absolutely have to put a policy, because I think there's, because again, it's what's the teeth behind it, right? What are the consequences? And like, especially in corporations, you put a policy, and if you can show that you didn't follow the policy, there are usually consequences of some sort, and it's a lot harsher than if they're guidelines. At the same, agreed. But at the same time, though, I mean, we are actually behind the curve on this, because social media is a thing of the past, present, and future, right? And so, which is, why we're glad that you're on our, on staff, and you're here, and you're helping us guide this, and I know this has been a conversation for a while. And I guess all that to say is that, I don't know what exactly those consequences are, whatever it may be, but I think it's good to have something. Our school district has policies on what they can do in social media, and having a policy, I don't think is something that's out of the ordinary, because of all the types of social media communications that exist, and the fact that it's really becoming part of our everyday life, right? And so, and we really do represent the city. We're not just council members, for example, just council, or even people on boards and commission, right? You're not just in that position every second and fourth Tuesday of the month. Like, we are council members, right, 24/7, for example, on our side. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we have some sort of, how can I say this, leeway, I guess, right? Because again, people are new, what's okay and not okay. Can we take what's in tidbits and copy and paste? We've got to just have some understanding. People are going to make mistakes, and then we're going to learn from that. Like, man, we probably should have done that. We might have to alter it along the way. So I guess as long as there's the ability to be flexible and adaptable along the way, I think is important. But I think it would be good to have something, and I find it interesting that, and this isn't the first or the last time, that other cities are looking to us to kind of see what we do to kind of pave the way. So we might be actually, helping to guide that.
Mark, I know you asked, but I'm going to piggyback on that one. Why was Durham
why the gold standard?
I am honestly not sure, but every single resource on an organization I'm a member of, 3CMA, which is a marketing organization for city municipal governments, every single resource pointed to the city of Durham, North Carolina's policy as the gold standard.
Well, maybe they have a really aggressive PIO.
That might be the case. But then even anecdotally, when I was talking to our local cities, many of our local cities pointed me to Durham's policy and said, you should check this one out. We've heard it's the gold standard. So.
I think that definitely adopting this policy just right away would be a smart thing, because I think it's gonna protect us and give other people guidance. We can worry about the teeth part of it later, after it's been around a while. People know it's there. They come in, they are given the training, and they know exactly what they're held accountable to. Then you consider that.
Mm-hmm. What I'd like to suggest is that Hannah goes back off and develops the formal policy, and at the same time, but by separate action, she can work with Bob, or Bob can bring us a change to our ordinances to add in, through the ethics commission, the whatever you want to call it. And we'll have the option to adopt either or at that time. It wouldn't be one or the other. It wouldn't be all of the above. Just to your point that we may need to tweak one or the other.
I can bring you some options on the sanction
Okay.
that you can kick around.
So everybody okay? Hannah, you got your marching orders?
I have got my direction.
Hey,
John's
you got it.
Oh, I'm sorry, John.
Switzerland.
Yes. So Hannah, I have a couple of questions. I know you said that you've actually polled 35 cities, and then just to be clear, that of the 8, 4 responded, saying that they have similar. So only 4 actually has in policy, or are we talking about 35 actually do have it, but only 4 actually replied,
So
saying that
that,
they have policy in place?
so only 4 replied that they had a policy in place. I did not hear from the majority of the cities that we polled, so I'm unsure if they have policies in place or not.
Okay, and the policy that they have in place is exactly the same wording as the one in Durham?
No, no, sir. So the various policies vary city by city. Our policy is even not the exact same as the city of Durham's policy. It has been modified a bit. But the general information within the policies is consistent across the board.
Well, I think this is one of the things that I'm concerned about, is this being too restrictive, especially with the number 5 on the second part, where it's talking about even just liking and sharing or retweeting, and just liking itself is considered as being it could be a violation, which is I think this is too restrictive in a sense for all of the council members and their personal opinions and freedom of speech. So that is something that we need to think about and take into consideration, being too restrictive of the council members' right to right to freedom of speech.
Yes,
So,
sir. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think that, again, I'm not sure about, I understand about, wanting to have something in place, but having something too restrictive, again, even Kevin mentioned about what the emails that we get, all public, and they're all public records. Anybody could go and request that, and everything in there can be requested and can be obtained by anybody. And something like that being retweeted or reposted is not something that's a confidential or privileged information in the sense, because again, those are public records. But I'm really concerned about the number 5 where it says even liking, sharing, retweeting political, is considered as a political affiliation as well, just because you like something.
Yes, sir.
So
Thank you for that.
Yeah, that's my thought on that one.
Kevin?
2 things. I hear John's point, but one thing I will say is, like, you see on number 6 where it says officials should refrain, where on number 5 it says should consider. So there is differentiating wording there that, it's, to me, number 5 sounds like you're just advising them to be thoughtful and mindful of what you're doing. I don't think there's any restrictive language in that number 5. But John, I do understand your point with just wanting to have that freedom to be able to do that. So, but I do see that, I do see the difference in this, but I understand your point and just being cautious about that. So, the second thing I had a question for our city attorney. I know we kind of alluded to it before, but is there an instance where you can create an email and it becomes privileged or confidential, where it is not subject to Public Information Act?
We do.
I can, you can.
That's how it works?
Yeah,
Or we
because
copy.
because of attorney-client privilege.
Okay.
So if you and I have an attorney-client privilege about matters of city business,
Mm-hmm.
I can communicate with you and give you legal advice by email,
Okay.
but that creates, it's public information subject to the exception.
Got it.
So it's still out there on the mojo line, so someone could hack and get it. That's why I don't do that.
No, it's understood. There's there's been a digital
But you and I
file
can't,
created.
you can't have one with Mike. Now, Mike can claim that it's privileged, or confidential, and send you information, secure it with a password and all those kinds of things. But if I get an open records request for it, I gotta turn it over. unless I can come up with an exception.
Okay.
There's a presumption that you and I have privilege, there's no presumption that you and Mike have.
Okay.
There are times though when I'm communicating with you that I'm copying Bob on it because it may be involved with a transaction or it may be involved with a lawsuit. And so it's under those exceptions that I'm triggering the
It's because I've
confidentiality.
given him advice he's not sharing with you.
Right.
Got it. Okay. I know there's some fine lines there, so just want to make sure that.
And per your earlier conversation, we will continue to improve our clarity of what is confidential and what's privileged.
Excellent. Idiot proof.
Let's get big red Z's, may not share on social media and stand on
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate your time this evening.
Just as a reminder, the document still is on SharePoint, and so if you have any other, or think of anything else, you have the ability to go in and do that, so that she can work on that from there.
And one of the things that I'll remind you, this is about matters of city business. You can still talk about whatever else you want to talk about on your own personal account.
Right.
Till you're blue in the face.
Blue in the face.
All right, item C. This always gets me because the word just annual vector control update. Louis, I'm going to let you have it from there. I saw you roll your eyes.
It's like, okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. The purpose of my presentation tonight is to give you a quick update about our vector control program and talk about a contract that's coming up with Dallas County. Just to clarify the vector is any insect that carries disease. So the program that we have, vector control program, is our program to minimize the transmission of disease from insect to human beings. So that's just the vector control program. And I truly believe we have one of the best vector control programs in North Texas. And I say this for 3 reasons. Number one, we have a 100% data-driven program. Everything we do is driven by the data we receive from a lab or observation from the field. By doing this, we are able to invest city resources in the right places every week. Second, we have more traps per capita than any other city in North Texas. We have 100% of our residential areas covered week after week. That's something we can claim other cities can't. Third, we work closely with cities around us. That's Louisville, Grapevine, Carrollton, and City of Irving. And that's a challenge for our staff because that's 3 different counties at the same time. But we are able to coordinate with them because we understand that vector control diseases is not going to be an isolated incident for City of Coppell. So we do this to be proactive about any regional trends that's coming across North Texas. If somebody asked me to summarize with one slide what we do for vector control program, I would share this slide. City of Coppell is divided to 6 different mosquito management areas. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Every Thursday, we trap for mosquitoes in one trap in one of these areas. On Friday morning, we collect the traps, we send it to Dallas County, and we receive notification on Monday if it's positive or negative. If it is positive, it triggers a chain of reaction. We will inform everybody that lives in the impacted area using 3 methods. We use social media feeds, our website, that's a city website, our environmental health website, and the third method we use Everbridge, which is a call or a text message that you signed up for. For anybody that's wondering how we sign up for, you just go cityofcoppell.gov/notify-Coppell. You could sign up so you could receive all of our notification. I mentioned data-driven program. What does it mean? It really is 6 steps. Number 1, surveillance, source reduction, larviciding, adulticiding, public education, and personal protection. For surveillance, we use 2 kinds of traps. The first one's called Gravity Traps. It uses stinky water, basically just water with organic material that we set in the sun for about 2 weeks. It attracts mosquito to it. When a mosquito comes to the black bucket, we're able to capture the mosquito with the net. With that net, the exact net, we take to Dallas County for testing. The second trap is a little bit more advanced trap, it's BG traps. BG traps use dry ice because it reduces carbon dioxide, which mimics the human behavior of breathing, which captures certain insects or certain type of mosquitoes what we are looking for at that time. So it's 2 different traps. We use gravity trap and BG traps. For source reduction, we heavily have a public education program that encourages our residents to look around their homes for any standing water or places that encourage the mosquito breeding areas. And when we get a call, usually say, hey, we have mosquitoes around our house, we do 3 things. Number 1, we offer courtesy inspection of her backyard. We would ask the person, would you like us to come to your backyard to look around to see where the mosquito is coming from? Number 2, we hand them mosquito dunks. And number 3, we hand them mosquito repellent. So anytime somebody calls us, we do 3 things. Courtesy inspection, we hand them a mosquito dunks, and mosquito repellent at the same time. But we also, to reduce costs, we use biological control method to get rid of mosquito larvae. So essentially what we do, we find breeding areas, and we drop mosquito fish in it, Gambusia fish, where it actually eat the mosquito larvae. So we could get rid of mosquito larvae without using the chemicals. When it comes to larviciding, it is important for me to say that there is about 75% of the life cycle of the mosquito is spent in water. The egg and the larvae, everything is spent in water. So we have 300% more chances to kill the mosquito in the water than once flying. And we take that very seriously. So you hear about mosquito trapping in May, but we actually start in March or earlier. We look for mosquito breeding areas and make sure we treat it before the summer comes. So we use 2 kinds of chemicals. The first one is Altacid. It's our staff drives the city and use that one. And then the one on the right is the dunks that we hand residents anytime they ask us for dunks or if they have mosquitoes around their homes. Adulticiding. A lot of time when people hear about mosquito control, they think about a truck that's spraying a neighborhood. There's a lot of things that happens before we actually send the truck. The truck is about 25% of what we do. Everything else, it happens way before we send the trucks out. We use 2 different types of adulticiding spraying. The first one is ultra low volume sprayer. So basically a sprayer, a truck drives around town, no more than 20 miles per hour, and spray as they go. I say low volume because we really use very little chemicals when we spray. So if you have been in the Cowboy Stadium or the AT&T, imagine the entire stadium and an Advil bill. That's exactly how much we spray per acre, which is, it's almost nothing. And it doesn't leave any residue, which that protects all other creatures. It's very targeted just for mosquitoes, the spray we do. In certain instances where we have to go, we call it house-to-house compact, we use a backpack mist blower. And we haven't had to use it in about 4 years, which is good. A lot of times we use it to do like mosquito storm drains or very tight areas where a truck cannot get into. Public education is probably something we take very, very serious in the city of Coppell. We have one of the best websites in North Texas, and that thanks to Hannah and her team to help us do it. Every Monday, when we have any positive or negative, we actually update our website on the top of it with the current activity. It tells you exactly route by route where our positive samples came from. And more than that, we have an added value that other cities don't, is we have a live map on our website that you could click on your area. It shows you exactly what we have been doing throughout the year. The yellow spot talks about areas that we inspected. So anytime somebody call us about their home, if it's close to a public park or any public area, we would come to this map and update it. So people can go to this map at any given day or night, could know exactly what we're doing in their areas. If you click on some of those, give you even more information about exactly what's going on. And that's something that we're very proud of because, again, I had to present this to Dallas County last year to adopt it in their program because something they don't have. We have access to a great GIS team, and that's why we're able to do it. Again, mosquito control is something we cannot do alone. We need everybody's help. And that's why we always, in our education, we focus on personal protection. It's what we used to say the 4 Ds. Defend yourself by applying insect repellent, dress in long sleeves, stay indoor, dusk on dawn, and drain all stagnant water in your backyard. So this is almost at the end. We have 1 more month or 5 more weeks before the end of the season. So how are we doing? Usually, there's a lot of metrics that we look at. There's, today I'm sharing with you 3 metrics just to make it easy to simplify what's going on. We monitor where the first positive is, last positive, and the total every year. And usually, if we have a mosquito that starts with positive sample that comes very early, like this one in 2017, we had one in May, we know we're going to have a very, very busy season. If you look 18, 19, and 20 was normal. This year is a little bit high, but you could look at me and challenge me and say, well, the first positive was in July. How come it's still busier than the other season? And there's 3 reasons. For a mosquito to thrive, they need, number 1, stagnant water. Well, we had enough rain the last 2 months to have those stagnant water. Number 2, they need heat overnight. It's been very hot. And number 3, they need blood samples, which are human beings walking around. And those 3 conditions exist in Coppell today. And that's why we have basically a busy season. I expect that number to be around 30 before the end of the season, which ends by the end of September. So those are 3 main metrics we look at. So as we said, the data-driven program has 6 steps. And each of those steps, we cannot do it alone. City staff is involved in each one of them. But for surveillance, it's city staff and Dallas County. We have responsibility to do that. For source reduction, it's us, but we highly encourage our residents to help us by draining stagnant water around their homes. Larviciding, again, is the same way. We do the Alticid, the chemical, but we would give them dunks to treat it as well. Adulticiding, and that's where we use the contract with Dallas County to help us spray around the city. Public education, it's our team and Hannah's team. Personal protection, again, the city staff and residents work closely together in order to get that done. So those are the 6 steps for us to have a very successful program year after year that we have to follow. And I'm ready for your questions.
So the Adulticiding, is that our truck that goes around spraying, or is that a Dallas County truck?
It's a Dallas County truck.
And I know that we have one time in the last 9 years used their aerial spraying.
Yes, sir.
And that's still an option for the category 4, is that correct?
Absolutely, it's an option. So in order for us to do an aerial spraying, we have something called mosquito index. The mosquito index have 10 metrics that we measure throughout the year. One of it, how many positive samples we're getting. In each trap, how many mosquitoes we're getting, how many hot days, how many rainy days. So if that mosquito index triggers 0.5, trigger stage number 4, and that would require me to come back here to ask you to declare emergency in order to do aerial spraying. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Council? Brianna?
I'll just say thank you for that update because that was really helpful considering that, right, we're in the midst of it right now. We're getting messages all the time, and so just understanding how we're zoned per se with the numbering and what happens. And then I had no idea that you would even go to people's homes if they called you and you needed help, and then you're able to track all of that, kind of going forward. And so I think that's all really helpful. And I may have missed this part. This is my only question, but with regards to the traps, I presume those are moved around, or help me understand just the...
So in the middle of each one of those zones, there's the diamond shape. That's that trap.
Okay.
The reason we used to move the traps within that zone, but the CDC recommended not moving the traps anymore, so we don't impact the historical data that we collect year after year.
Okay.
But if we needed to add another trap in those areas, we keep the existing trap, we just add a different trap.
Okay.
I think it's very helpful to hear about the different levels of the activity. That
Yeah.
that was the first time I heard that. That was very helpful. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
What you do is often unappreciated and not heard. So it's one of the things that you keep us out of a lot of hot water with the mosquito control. So thank you very much. Vector control. I'm sorry.
Well, and West Nile it's a real
It's still a real
deal.
thing.
It's a real thing. Yeah, and
It
it's a big deal. There was a council member in South Lake a few years back that ended up with West Nile and went through some hard times with their health, and they were thankfully able to recover, but it was a really hard journey. So
Well, one of our members of our economic development
that's
came
right.
down with it, and
I heard that.
he was sick for a
A
long
long
time.
time. That's right.
So it's not, yeah.
So it happened. So thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, item B, Mr. Ellis, Procurement 101 presentation.
Okay, this wasn't actually in your packet, so I've got some takeaways here. You want one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so good evening, Mayor and Council. Mike had asked me to put together some information and then present in a work session. So we're going to go over a little bit about the procurement activities in a municipal environment and what are different aspects of that. So in Coppell, the department's called Procurement Services, and if we haven't met, my name's Charles Ellis, and I'm the city's Chief Procurement Officer. And we also have a procurement technician that works in the department. And we're both certified with different organizations, but everybody's credentialed in the department. So just as far as procurement services go, we're focused on these three areas, which are your traditional purchasing processes, vendor relationship management, and then contracting. And those three are kind of melded together at any given point. But what we're going to focus on here are the municipal purchasing processes. And so the key word there is municipal, because it's quite a bit different than the private sector. For government procurement, and this applies to any city in Texas, most of the activities are driven by statute, which in the local government code is Chapter 252. And there's a whole litany of subsections. But just like the name implies, there's purchasing and contracting authority of municipalities. So that's what I deal with daily, typically. So in procurement, we have, everything, the life cycle of procurement starts with a need, for whatever department that might be. And there's some different procurement methods we use that, again, are defined by statute. And we're going to go over these in a little bit more detail. So at the city, for anything below, for a purchase that we need to make that's below $50,000, departments are asked to get quotes for that service. And they can go obtain that themselves, various vendors, make a selection, we move on. When it gets over $50,000, that's when you'll see it. And it starts with either a request for qualification, RFQ, request for bid, which is for general goods and services, and then a request for proposal, which is another method for goods and services. And we'll get into those in a second. The second primary method that we have to procuring goods and services is with cooperatives. And these are also established by state statute, and we can take advantage of those different organizations that exist. So once we put something on the street, make a selection, enter into a contract with a vendor, that then gets into our Munis, which is our ERP system, And then, so we track contracts, requisitions, purchase orders, budget information, all within that system. And then at the end of the life cycle of products, we conduct auction services. And we have a third party that provides that service for us. It's an online auctioneer. So this is just a recap of what we do. RFQ, RFB, RFP. So, what's a request for qualifications? This is defined by statute, and these are the services that you use an RFQ for. So, accounting services, which is auditing, accountants auditing, architecture or an architect, landscape architecture, land surveying, medicine, optometry, nursing. So we need to release an RFQ for a medical director for the fire department. So that would be an example. But probably the most pertinent example is the professional engineering services. So what's happened, to give you an example, Kent Collins, every 3 years, he puts an RFQ out on the street, which is a best practice, which is a good thing to do. And sooner than 5 years is the second part of the best practice. And so the last one we did, we got maybe 45 responses, and then he and his team selected 14 firms that we would potentially work with over that next 3 years. So that's how we select engineering firms. And then once you make that selection, then you go to them for pricing information. And then that, at that time, it would come to the council, and you would see, seeking approval for a design of something that was with a PE firm. But we got to that PE firm by an RFQ process. So then you've got requests for bid, and it's general goods and services. You use the bid for information that is specifically defined. You've got part numbers, detailed specs, our construction projects. Those are all requests for bid. There are some exceptions, and this applies to all bidding activities. The state allows for, I've got listed there, utilities, if there's books, particularly for a library, if there's copyright issues, you don't necessarily have to follow these processes. Retail sales, so at Wagon Wheel, the tennis center, they're selling rackets and equipment and whatever. That doesn't necessarily have to go through this bidding process. Doesn't mean they're not saving money and trying to get the best bang for their buck, but it doesn't have to go through this process. And so what does the bid do? It streamlines the process. So there's generally a uniform response that's received. And here at the city, we use a best value determination, and there's criteria such as pricing, quality, past relationship with the vendor, other criteria that we would specify. We use that in selecting the lowest responsible bidder. So, but generally, like take a construction project, it's generally going to go to the low bidder unless there's an issue. So even with something like a construction project, we don't have to go with the lowest bidder. But it would be because of something egregious, which has happened. We just had this happen 8-10 months ago. A vendor forgot to even respond on a line item. And if they had, it would have put them, so we moved on to the second lowest bidder. So that's the bid. And then the RFP. I know these things, I don't have cats and dogs, and so this topic's a little different than Hannah's. So the RFP is used to produce goods and services where you don't necessarily know exactly what the final product's going to look like. And so I indicate, it's less well defined, there's unknowns. And so you put it out on the street, and then the responses are going to vary. We just look for responses from the vendor. It's however they want to respond. And then we utilize a review committee to make a selection and score the various responses. And then the selection is made at that point. Okay, so those are our primary methods of acquiring goods. The second option we have are the use of cooperatives. And really what I'm discussing are things that you may see on a council agenda. That's kind of what we're trying to do here. So we can enter into interlocal agreements with other entities, South Lake, Louisville, pick a city. We have ILAs with most of them, not every city. And that allows us to, so let's say Louisville bids a service. We could use that contract if we have an ILA with Louisville, which we do, and then we would not have to go through the bidding process because they've done all the due diligence on that. We also can use cooperative programs through the comptroller's office. So, for example, our P-card program with Citibank is through the state, which is a good program because we get back about 1.7 rebates on our credit card usage. There's a state travel management program we utilize, so if you need to rent a car and it's enterprise, that's actually through this program. And then what you'll also see on agenda items might be a technology purchase through the Department of Information Resources, and that organization is the purchasing arm for the state of Texas for all technology. So whether it's Dell computers, different software, whatever it might be. And then there are some regular term contracts that we utilize. And so then the statute allows us to use third-party organizations for cooperative purchasing activities. And these are valuable, and they add value by streamlining the bidding process. So what these are, so examples there are Buy Board, Choice Partners, HGAC. I'll use Buy Board as an example. That's probably the oldest cooperative in Texas. They go out and bid for goods and services. They put it all on the street. It goes through a process. It's documented. And then they make a selection on one or multiple vendors. And then we can utilize that through Local Government Code 271. So there's several cooperatives. They don't all have the same offerings, but that's why we join those that we do. So they're a valuable tool in the acquisition of goods and services. You just have to be careful because there's typically fees involved with the vendors and that organization, and so that's ultimately going to flow back to us. So that's just we have to look at those kinds of issues when we're making a decision on which one to use. But like Buy Board, for example, we get back about 2% of what we put through there, so it's a healthy number. And that is it. So I'm here for questions.
Got one. I think the thing that's going through our mind when we hear something come through a buy board or a cooperative program, suppose, and I'm going to make this up, so it's going to be completely fictitious, but Vicki decides that her feet are cold in her office and she decides she's going to buy a heater.
Yes.
And she finds one through a buy board or one of the cooperative.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we know that she's getting the best buy?
Okay, so I'm going to talk in general terms.
Well, this was fictitious, so.
Yeah. So everything that you're looking at in this room was purchased on a cooperative. So the chairs, this desk, this microphone, the television, the pen in my pocket, the paper that's printed on, it's all purchased on a cooperative. And so those, and it's Staples Advantage, Staples Advantage program. There's Staples and there's Staple Advantage, which is for government entities. That's been vetted by these cooperative organizations. So that's who we utilize in our programs. And we have some of these vendors that have been integrated into Munis where there's an e-procurement process, and it makes it very easy for users to use those vendors that we need them to use. So for those kinds of, talking about a heater, yeah, we buy that from Staples. she's getting a good price. Doesn't mean it's gonna be, if she put a lot of research into it, doesn't mean she couldn't find it for somewhere else where it might be on sale. That's entirely possible. But generally, we're getting a good deal on those types of products.
Thank you. Brianna?
So I guess just piggybacking on that, then it sounds like where the maybe savings come in, if that's what we want to call it, right, is more of the going through the services part, right? Rather than the actual, like, tangible items, thinking through, like, what vendor are we going to use for street, maintenance, or our rebuilding of sidewalks, or things like that. It sounds like that's kind of where we start to have that leverage of looking for savings versus, like you said, there could be research put into it, but.
Yes, so there are services we'll always want to contract ourselves so that we kind of control the relationship.
Right.
And then there's a loyalty, that the vendor might have to us. So cooperatives are extremely valuable in providing savings to the whole bidding process. And most of them are the lowest price for a government entity. They're in the world, in the United States, there is no lowest price. It doesn't exist. Even at the federal level in GSA schedules, federal buyers have to go and get pricing from 3 different vendors. Well, why do they have to do that if it's the lowest price that's available? So that whole concept just doesn't exist. You have to put a lot of research and time and effort. And the co-ops, these cooperatives, streamline that whole process. And then the bidding that we talked about, putting bids on the street or proposals, those are for term contracts that are beneficial to the city, and we're trying to maximize the benefit, even if it's available on a cooperative. The only way to really know if you're getting the lowest price is to put something on the street.
So it sounds to me like part of this is due to the government contracting rules, that going to a cooperative saves you a ton of overhead.
Yeah, yes, it's all the indirect costs that you're saving.
That would be incurred if you went out looking for that lowest price.
That's absolutely correct.
I got it. I did not catch that until your presentation tonight, so thank you very much.
You said that very well.
Repeat that?
Just what he said that I said. No, I mean, it was when he started talking about all of the processes that you have to go through to go buy something, and then it dawned on me that that's what the cooperatives or the collectives give you. I know that
due diligence.
Yeah, and because I know when he was talking about the engineering companies, vetting a PE firm or a PE, that's a lot of work. Architecture is the same thing. And so if you pre-vetted those, then that is saving you a significant amount of time for a one-off incident.
Right.
Okay, thank you. I'm good. Bijou.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, I remember Chief Richardson saying he bought the fire trucks through the Houston, Galveston area,
Yes,
right?
that's well
That's
known.
how we saved some money.
Yes, it's HGAC is well known for heavy equipment,
Right.
and particularly fire equipment. So they have a contract with the 2 fire truck vendors in the U.S. So, yeah, buying a fire truck is a hugely complex endeavor, and we could never put the documentation together in a reasonable amount of time to buy it because there's so many. I mean, the production sheet is probably 37 pages long, and you make so many decisions. So we're using the expertise that HGAC's already gone through to buy that kind of stuff.
I used to work on the other end of that, making the truck, and everything he said is it is unbelievably complicated to go order one of those things.
Yeah, just the dump truck is this complex endeavor. International truck with the body. I mean, it gets down to where do you want the coat hooks in the cab of the thing. I mean, we're not going to think of that stuff when we're trying to put a proposal together.
You okay?
Oh, yeah. This is not, I long since forgot how many RFPs I put together.
All right, anybody have anything else?
Stay up.
No, but thank you for the information.
Yeah, Charles, thank you very much.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, item E, Ms. Vicky, the Atmos 2021 rate review mechanism. Sorry to use the heater and use your.
That's okay. That could be a real thing, so. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having me here this evening. I have the pleasure of being here tonight to provide you with some information regarding the Atmos rate review mechanism filing, which is an agenda item that's going to come to you in September. And this is something that happens annually for the council. It's basically a resolution to approve a negotiated settlement between the Atmos Cities Steering Committee, of which we are a member, and Atmos Energy for gas rate increase. So this is an annual thing, and I thought it would be helpful tonight for me to come before you and just give you some background on what this is all about. So I'm going to go back in history a little bit. So historically, cities exercised their original jurisdiction over gas rates charged within their boundaries. And if a city and gas utility could not reach an agreement on those rates, the gas company would appeal to the Railroad Commission of Texas. Once the case was there, the city was responsible for proving that case, which meant they had to provide the resources for an attorney, for research, and everything that was necessary to go in and dispute the gas rate increase. Additionally, there was no consumer advocate at the Railroad Commission of Texas. So at one time, cities had their own distribution rates, and they had to process those rates at their local level. This ended when cities decided to create an ad hoc group to oppose a rate increase by pooling their resources and coordinating their efforts. And this resulted in the group that became known as the Atmos Cities Steering Committee, or ACSC, which is what I'll call it for the rest of this presentation. Today, ACSC is a coalition of 172 cities that was formally established in 2006 to address the gas rate changes and other franchise issues related to Atmos. Several of its objectives are to ensure that rates are charged that are charged to cities are fair and reasonable, to ensure that gas service is safe and reliable, and that our city's original jurisdiction over the rates and services is protected. This group is especially important because the legislature has given gas utilities a right to an annual increase in rates, which is why you see this every year. However, the way that the rates have been established has not always been fair to consumers. In 2003, this rate increase was established through the Gas Reliability Infrastructure Program, which is also called GRIP. And GRIP allowed the rates to increase if investments by the company increased, even if those companies had increasing revenues and declining expenses. The GRIP process also denied city participation and oversight in the process. And in 2007, ACSC negotiated an agreement with Atmos to establish the rate review mechanism process, which allows cities to make a more comprehensive evaluation of all aspects of the utility's business when negotiating the reasonable rate increase. The RRM also benefits the ACSC members by allowing cities to participate in the process that would be denied under GRIP, and by allowing cities to recover those rate-making costs, which means that if they had to hire attorneys, etc., they would recover those costs. In ACSC, because it is a coalition, we do work with a group of attorneys to help us with this rate-making process. They do all the work, and then when we do recover funds, it covers their expenses. ACSC has saved consumers from paying millions of dollars of unreasonable gas rates throughout the years. The group advocates for fair rates and safe service, and again, make sure that consumers are represented. So as I mentioned, you'll typically see this item on your agenda once a year to approve a rate increase for Atmos Energy. That agenda item for this year will be coming before you in September in the form of a resolution, and you'll be asked to approve a negotiated settlement of $22.78 million for ACSC cities. Atmos originally requested $43.4 million. So as a result of this process that we use through ACSC and the RRM, this is a pretty substantial savings for our cities. So this concludes my presentation on the background and the purpose of ACSC and the RRM process. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have to the best of my ability. And I have to put that in there because this is a very complicated subject.
Cliff, does ACSC cover all of the territories that Atmos is involved in, all cities that Atmos, or is it just a area that's been defined?
It covers those cities that are members of ACSC.
So all the cities in...
There's quite a few up in the North Texas region that are part of it, but not all cities are part of ACSC.
Is that right?
So what does Atmos do to those cities that aren't members?
Well, I don't know what Atmos does to them. A lot of them are still part of the GRIP process. For example, Dallas does not participate in this, so they pay their rates based on how GRIP increases the rates. In your packet, there's some information about the difference in what Dallas rates would be based on ours. And it's not a significant difference, but it's enough to recognize that if you don't go through this RRM process, their rates are increasing much faster than ours are. So it's a belonging to ACSC has been very beneficial to us.
John?
So I just had a question about how the process is. So you said we're one of the 172 cities, and basically is this a simple majority of the approving the proposal, the costs? I guess, what is it? They asked for 43. Looks like ACSC okay with what, 22?
So
Is that just a simple majority voting saying that okay, we're just going to go ahead and approve this part, and then that's basically what they come back with, and we vote on this, or how does that work?
No, sir. Actually, ACSC asked for all cities to approve this resolution, and if you do not approve the resolution, there is a consequence for the city that does not approve. And I have just an explanation of what that is. And what it is that Atmos would either appeal the denial to the Railroad Commission, or they would initiate the imposition of GRIP rates, or both. So rates for the resident of that city would be higher than the rates of other ACS member residents. So if we don't...
Only the ones that
don't approve.
Sorry, go ahead.
Only the ones that would not approve the resolution would be subjected to the GRIP rates.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? This does come up just once a year, and it always catches me blind, so thank you for the prep on this.
There will be one from Encore as well at some point in time.
We're also partnered with Encore.
Good.
Don?
Hey, just real quick, so make sure I understand what is, I know there were financial information and everything, but what are the data that we are making a decision on? Just a recommendation? Are we, how, I guess I'm struggling a little bit on how do we make the decision. I'm assuming we don't want to do this where we're the only one who doesn't do it and things like that, but I guess I'm struggling a little bit not knowing, what data we use to actually come to a conclusion on this.
What I can tell you, Don, is that ACSC hires a group of attorneys to negotiate the settlement, and they review the requests by Atmos, and they go through all of their business information, and they determine whether or not the request is reasonable. And at that point, they come back to us and they say, here's the negotiated settlement, and we would ask you to approve it. And in your packet also, there is a lot of information about the types of data that they're looking at.
Mm-hmm. Right, okay. So it is really based on the recommendation of the executive committee is what we're really relying on. Correct?
Yes, sir.
And one other thing to make sure I understand, so we are doing it on behalf of our Atmos customers that are within our city limits, right? Is that, I mean, because the city's not getting any benefit from this, or it's not really doing anything for us. It's on behalf of our City of Coppell customers. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Mayor?
Yes.
Real quick, Councilman Carroll, there's also the, our attorneys that represent us with the cooperative also provided detail of how they reviewed the application. We provide that staff report, so when you are asked to approve this, we'll get a staff report from our attorneys to tell us how they've analyzed the information and make that recommendation, so you have a factual basis on which to consider their recommendation to approve.
Okay, well that's helpful, and I wasn't trying to reinvent the wheel as much as it just sounded like a big decision, you know, for us to make if we're not really in that space. So that's helpful. There will actually be some more data.
John?
The impact that this bill is going to have, which kind of shows that the residents can be having approximately what, $1.28 on a monthly basis, is that something similar as the previous years, or is that something significantly higher than other years that they have made a proposal? Do you know?
I believe that information is in the packet. Let me see if I can locate it. It does vary year to year. Let's see. There's a lot of stuff.
I apologize. I don't have my computer, so I didn't get a chance to really look at all the.
You didn't.
Councilman, I don't have that information with me, so I'll be happy to look it up for you. What I can tell you is, just to give you an idea of the variation from year to year of the requests that Atmos makes and the actual settlement. For example, in 2020, they requested $136 million, and the settlement was $124 million. But in 2019, it was $54 million requested and $48 million settled. And it's very different from year to year. One year they requested 15 and they settled for 6. So it depends on their investments, their revenues, their expenses. All of those things are taken into account when they come up with their request and then ultimately their settlement.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate your time. Let's see. The time is 7:03 p.m. and we are adjourned from work session. We will move into the council chambers for regular session, which will start promptly at 7:30. Thank you, everybody.
Just real quickly, for those that are here, have a seat in the chair. Move it up and down, move it around. This is a chair that we're
Thanks for coming. This is the Coppell City Council. The time is 7:30 p.m. and we're reconvening into our regular session. Just as a reminder, tonight, if citizens wishing to speak during the citizens' appearance need to sign in on the table outside, and Ashley, our city secretary, will pass those names along to me. Tonight, we have Associate Pastor Rolando Carrizales with Mundo de Fe giving the invocation, and then we'll recite the Pledge of Allegiance. So would everyone please stand for the invocation?
Thank you. Mayor said, my name is Rolando Carrizales, Associate Pastor at Life Church Coppell and Mundo de Fe, and I want to express my gratitude and tell you that it's my honor to be here. This is my first time leading an invocation prayer at this city council. I appreciate your invitation, and I want to let you know that as a church in this community, we pray for you, and we lift you up, and you are a significant and so important part of the welfare of the citizens of this city. Coppell is a great city. We've been here since 2010, and I can honestly say that it represents the values that we hold dear as a community and as a nation. So I appreciate your dedication, your devotion, your service that you give to all the citizens of Coppell. I want to speak value and a blessing to all of you in this council in everything you do in all your endeavors. So thank you. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for the opportunity and privilege to be here today. Your word says that there is wisdom that is found in the counsel of many. I pray for Mayor Mays and each of the city council members that you will strengthen them and that you give them the capacity, Father, to make wise decisions for the future of Coppell. We ask that you grant them the wisdom and clear vision. I pray that every decision that is made today will be guided by your hand. In Jesus' name, amen.
And please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Pastor Rolando, you may not have known what you just did, but you may be giving up your next Tuesdays for the next several months. So thank you very much. Item number 5 is our citizens' appearance. Persons wishing to speak must sign the register and list their residence of address. Each speaker must state his or her name and address of residence. Presentations by individuals shall be limited to 2 minutes each. An individual speaker time may be extended for an additional 2 minutes with the approval of the majority of the council that is present. Persons signed up to speak will be called in order that they signed up. No personal attacks by any speaker shall be made against any member of the council, mayor, individual, group, or corporation. Once the timer sounds, the city secretary will cut in and break and make the request to the mayor and the council if they would like to extend the speaker's time to an additional 2 minutes. Keep in mind that we do have 2 of our members that are remote via Zoom. We do have 1 person signed up to speak tonight. That's Mr. Burroughs. Mr. Burroughs? Name and address, please, sir.
My name is Thomas Burroughs, 138 Windpage Drive. And first we want to compliment the Coppell police and their EMT people. We had a neighbor that fell dead close to my house, but they got there as soon as possible. So, the street light at the end of my street across from your business has been out for a month. I've reported this 4 times. I don't know what we have to do to get a street light fixed, but, there's trees on a manhole, on a sewer manhole. I cannot imagine that trees next to a sewer manhole can be good for our sewer system. You guys know where that is. The bushes on the alleyway in my neighborhood are so far out, I have to drive on the other side of the alleyway off of it to get down the road. The growth at 635 and Beltline still has not been cleaned up. For some reason, I'm not allowed to have a garden strip at the garden. Being in 4-H for 10 years and Gold Star Boy for my county, that's the highest award, I know a little bit about farming, and I have received no responses for the couple of boards I've applied to. I would have thought you'd at least sent me a response. And I've asked a city official about that and got no response. So, and, oh, by the way, if you think there's nothing to save for money, the parking lot lights are on outside. You know, the sun's still up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Was there anyone else signed up to speak?
No, sir.
Thank you very much. Sorry. Moving on, item number 6 is our consent agenda. The consent agenda is routine in nature and generally enacted in one motion. These items have been previously approved through our budget process or through past council actions. Any item may be pulled and considered separately. Full descriptions have been available on the screen. We do have 2 items available on the consent agenda. Council, your pleasure. Councilmember Matthew.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve consent agenda 6A and B.
And I have a Councilmember Neville.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Long, Enos, Smith, Carroll, Neville's, Matthew, John, Hill, in favor. None opposed. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Item number 7 is a citizens agenda item. This is a discussion to consider an option to connect a trail through Magnolia Park. And the City Council has been studying this for some time. And we have a collection of individuals from Magnolia Park that will be making the presentation. So,
we have. All right, wonderful. Yes, as long as it's working, I'm good. Hi, I'm Yvette Hightower, and I'm the Vice President of Magnolia Park HOA. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to present our research on the location of the trail connection in Magnolia Park. And thank you to all of the residents who are supporting our cause tonight. If you are here to support Magnolia Park, Eastlake, or West Haven, would you please stand up? And there are many more joining online. We also hired an esteemed civil engineer, Jeff Crandall, who did quantitative work on the issues surrounding the lake and the creek, and we are ready to explain why the South Side route, which is the original location designed by the Parks Board, is by far the best in terms of cost, strength and durability, and beauty. We call the South Side Trail the A+ version. Go. We have been working diligently with the neighboring subdivisions of Eastlake and West Haven to determine what the impacts of the design options have on all of us. We have dubbed ourselves the West Denton Creek Neighborhood Alliance. This is a collective of 473 homes. That's over 1,800 residents of Coppell. Sorry, I went too far. The Bike Trail Master Plan was originally to have the trail on the south side of the lake, which is where the 2 trail endpoints to be connected currently are. This length is 831 feet long and can be built at grade with almost no tree removal, both of which make it more cost-effective. Additionally, as our engineer will elaborate, the A+ will create levee stability between the lake and Denton Creek, which is one of our greatest concerns. This location is not only the most direct path and therefore the shortest, it is the most in keeping with the rest of the Coppell trail system throughout natural green spaces. This is not just about the aesthetics of the space. As someone who routinely bikes the trails, I can assure you that the tree-lined parts are far more desirable than the open areas. They are shaded in the heat and protected from the wind in the winter. Additionally, the West Denton Tap Neighborhood Alliance prefers the more direct route for children accessing the schools from all three neighborhoods and preserves the park for our children to play in instead of bisecting it with concrete. So now, take the bike ride with us, starting at the west connection point and going east towards Denton Tap. We are showing you the A1 experience with the lake on the left and the creek on the right. This is what the A+ experience will be. Here is the proof that the less expensive, shorter, less intrusive option with the tree cover is the better choice. We propose that the original master plan trail location is the A+ option because it is a shaded nature trail. It is more direct, it requires no tree removal, and adds long-term stability to the eroding levee between Denton Creek and the lake. Conversely, the alternative location, the B option, on the north shore of the lake is more than 300 feet longer and has no shade or wind protection. Every foot of concrete added to the Coppell parks is more impervious cover, causing more potential for more flooding. Grass areas are needed for groundwater absorption. Instead of providing a nature path, it provides bikers with views of backyards. It does nothing to stabilize the levee between the lake and the creek, so it will cost more both in concrete construction of the trail and more for public works to add the necessary shoreline stability. Finally, it will bisect the park where our children play ball. And now, let me introduce Jeff Crandall, who will tell you his own credentials personally.
Thank you, Yvette. My name is Jeff Crandall with CCM Engineering. We are an engineering company right now located in Highland Village, Texas, and I've been practicing civil engineering for 44 years. So, thank you. 42 of those years right here in Dallas and Denton County. My expertise is land development. We do a lot of single-family subdivisions. We currently have 2 master plan communities with trails very similar to this in the Metroplex that are under construction as we speak. So, been around the block. I also have 10 years of experience as a city engineer, and so I've sat on that side of the table, I've sat on this side of the table, so I kind of know how things look. And when this HOA approached me to look at their trail issue and trail question, I said, well, great, I'm going to give you my opinion. May not like my opinion, it may not favor your ideas, it may favor your ideas, but I'm going to give you my opinion. These folks are very passionate about their city and about their trail system, so I can certainly vouch for that. But when I first looked at this, I started looking online, which we have tremendous amount of information online, topography, tree covers, Google Earth, Google Maps. We have so much information online. I started researching this, and my first initial impression was, I like location B. It makes more sense. So in the wisdom of the HOA, they said, Jeff, come on out, let's visit, let's walk the site, let's walk through the neighborhood, let's walk through the trail system, let's go on both paths. And after that meeting on site, and after about a 2-hour walk, it was very clear and very obvious to me that my initial assessment was wrong. I started looking at links, I started looking at the topography, I started looking at trees, I started looking at the connectivity between the two trail systems that were already existing. And after all this data and research, it became very clear to me that no, where they originally had this trail constructed before has far more benefits besides cost. It has far more benefits than the other trail system. So I did make an about face and gave them my input. From that information, we looked at a probable cost, what we call an OPC, opinion of probable cost engineering assessment. That's a close approximation. We also throw in a contingency just because we don't know bidding. And right now, the two master plan communities we're bidding, construction prices are up. And so we've got to be careful with the estimates. But we put together a cost estimate that would provide analysis comparing these two trail systems, option A plus and option B. The real key here is the length of trail A plus. It's just much shorter, much more direct, less curvilinear, and whereas trail B is longer. Trail B has some benefits, but really far outweighed by A plus in the long run. After walking the site, we specifically went back a second time to the site with many of the neighbors to look at trees, to look at the proposed path along this levee. And it was very clear, except for the poison ivy, it was a fairly easy walk that day, and we were able to walk around that. But it just, as you're walking through there, it just felt like a trail I wanted to go on. And Yvette's right, and the videos show it, that it's just a beautiful trail system, and it was that way initially. So the trails used to be there, got washed away. So that's been my input so far. After multiple site visits, after multiple analysis, this Trail A Plus really became my favorite. I, as an engineer, as a former city engineer, as a current land development engineer, as a person that deals with trails almost on a daily basis, I really recommend that to the council. It would be my first choice if I was sitting in the chair of the city engineer, chair of the city council. And if you can advance the slide for me, Jack. I'm sorry, Jack, back up one quick spot. The OPC on the right-hand side, option A plus and B, we went down line item, unit price, using current pricing that we're getting in bids today. So we feel like those are accurate, plus or minus 10%. The unit costs don't match up on top to bottom because there are certain benefits to B, which is closer to a city street for a link, so the unit price is a little bit less for concrete placement. But however, option B has a more steeply sloping area to build a trail in. We like a nice flat trail, and there's not a lot of nice flat areas throughout most of the length of Trail B, whereas option A plus has a more topographically level area to build in. So we're going to have a much easier construction there. We would need some type of short retaining walls to get an 8-foot trail built in on a sloping piece of land. So you'll see some additional cost in option B for landscaping, screening, irrigation, and a short retaining wall. So that's the summary. Again, the numbers, we looked at them very closely. We looked at them individually and looked at them numerous times. Had some of the other engineers in my office compare my notes and do some cross-checking just so we got an accurate count on the overall cost. So we came up $100,000+ short on option A plus, so I'm sure you have other items in the city that you could fix a street light or do something else, and with some of that extra money that you've got. Jack, now if we can advance to, we also looked at one other option, and in one of the earlier meetings we had, is recognized that there's some potential erosion in this area. It is a levee system. We've got a detention pond, it's what it looks like to me. I've called existing pond on the uphill side. We have a levee, then we have Denton Creek a lot of rainwater, a lot of volume. That's a very large creek that handles a large drainage basin. So when we start to look at a 8-foot wide concrete trail, we do gain a little bit of value from that as far as encapsulating that levee with an 8-foot wide concrete. It gives a little bit of erosion protection, and it gives us some stability in that area. We also looked at another option, which would be to look at maybe improving on that slope stability where they had washouts in the past. There's, as you come off the existing overflow spillway, there's a fairly low spot, and at that point that could be the area of some future erosion. So if in the fact of the wisdom of the city, Public Works and City Council, that they say let's do some proactive erosion protection, I looked at a stem wall option, which would be a vertical wall in concert with our 8-foot trail that would give us some slope stability, 3 foot, 4 feet deep. It would give you some tremendous stability if in fact that area is an area that needs some slope stability. And I don't have enough in-depth study at that point to know what that long-term option would be. But when we're doing work in that area, certainly to add on to this project, we could add on at a much more reduced cost. If you've got labor, equipment, concrete, all those materials, might be something to look at adding on. It would give you a much stronger slope stability factor in there. So that's what that graphic is trying to show. It also kind of shows the levee system that we're trying to protect. So in summary, my analysis was that initially I like Trail B, but it quickly turned around when I got to the hard numbers, the hard research, walked the site, looked at all the options that go into building, designing, and constructing this trail, and it sure looked like A+ became the best option. So I'm happy to answer any questions from the council now or later on in the presentation if y'all have any other questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We appreciate that.
Thank you, Mayor.
Good evening. My name is Mark Henry. I live in Magnolia Park. I'm part of the Homeowners Association there, and we appreciate the opportunity to present this evening. I'm going to cover two topics. My first topic is, I think, the coolest topic of the night, so I'm the lucky guy that gets this one. And I'm going to talk about some consensus building. That's what we're trying to do here with our neighbors in Eastlake and West Haven. And we'll share that a little more in depth. And so that I don't put words into my partners' mouths in Eastlake and West Haven, they are going to speak for themselves as well to give you their thoughts. Secondly, I'm going to share a little more in-depth information about the regional VeloWeb. Many of you may know a great deal, a little. I don't want to make any assumptions. And so with that, what I'm going to do first is talk about the VeloWeb and how it connects to to our communities. Before I go on, I also want to say thank you to the Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and all the City Council members. I know you're volunteers, and I thank you very much for being here, City Manager Land, and your staff member, Tracy. She's really been helpful, as has Ashley. You've made this easy for us. I mean, it wasn't really easy putting this together, but they made it easy for us to present, okay? So thank you so much. Also, I see some of our park staff here, and thanks, guys. John Elias and his team, very helpful in getting the information that Jeff Crandall needed and our group needed, so we appreciate that assistance and support. Now, and then Jeff Crandall, your team, I know we're paying you money, but Jeff, you and your team have really put together a great win-win approach, very creative. Thanks for telling us the truth up front initially, and it's put us back on our heels, and then we said, okay, take another look, come out here with us, and Jeff did and stayed with us, and we think it's come up with a great plan. Now, on our consensus building, here's what's really cool. We sought to be understood. We reached out to the council to be understood and heard. Then we said, okay, you were gracious enough to do that. Let's go back and do our homework and reach out to our neighbors. so that we can be understood by our neighbors, and conversely, seek to understand what our neighbors' priorities are. And in that process, a really cool thing happened. We fell in love. No, no, that's a movie night thing. Okay, a really cool thing happened. We found out we had many shared issues and concerns. I met one of my brothers from Milwaukee. We're just a couple of transplants. Deepak, I'll introduce him later. And we just bonded, and we realized, wait a minute, this is a better way to live in Coppell and to partner in Coppell. So what did we do? We went to find a consensus. We talked with our homeowners. They talked with their homeowners. And they came back and brought the feedback together. We pooled it. We had many face-to-face meetings, multiple representatives from our community and theirs. We had Zoom call meetings, so we've been busy trying to get this well understood, sharing the information from CCM Engineering with them, and they were glad to let us pay for everything, so thanks. Thanks a lot, guys. We'll get back to you on the next project, but so the cool thing here is that while we got feelings from various homeowners that went the whole spectrum, nothing you're not unused to on the council, getting every different point of view. We got on the one end, we had people, many on the far west side of West Haven, for example, were saying, look, we've got a ramp over Denton Creek. We don't really need another one. Why are we spending any money? All the way to other people going, look, this is Coppell. You just grab the checkbook. If we want it on the south side, baby, let's just do it, right? So we got everything on both ends. But what happened was, where we met in the middle was this. And this, when we got there, it's like, well, of course this is where we were going to end up. Now you look at the wording used tonight. Option A and option B. Now which one do you think was the favorite? I mean, come on. There's a reason option B is option B. That's proverbial. That's why it's the second choice. Nobody wants option B. If you can't have option A, you say, okay, I'll settle. But option B wasn't the preferred option from anybody. As we listened to the council in various meetings, as we've listened to Park and Rec in various meetings, no one has said, hey man, we're on board, we want that option B. Nobody has said that. In fact, the opposite has been said from everything we've ever heard. So how do we get there? Well, the consensus was, look, if we can get option A and we can figure this out, we want option A. So the consensus developed, and the community said, okay, let's all get behind option A. So you will hear from our neighbors in Eastlake and West Haven as they address that. Now, before I move into the VeloWeb, and this is a little out of order, so bear with me, there's a reason for this. I just don't want us jumping back and forth. I would like to introduce some folks to the council. You may know some of them, and to everyone here. And I'll ask our partners in West Haven and Eastlake from the board, please stand up, gentlemen. And let me introduce them, and you'll hear from them later. First, from West Haven is Deepak Giavant. And everybody already in the whole city knows Deepak, so he doesn't need much of an introduction. He's a great community leader here. He is leading an initiative in the city called Connecting Communities. And he is also, in his spare time, then running the Neighborhood and Crime Watch for West Haven, a 300-plus home neighborhood. And since he was bored doing that, he's also consulting with West Haven and Magnolia on the Neighborhood Watch program. So thank you for being a great partner, Deepak. Next, I'd like to introduce to his right, Vijay Mandaram. And Vijay is on the West Haven Board of Directors, Homeowners Association Board of Directors. Vijay has been part of that consensus development that I mentioned, reaching out into the community, gathering those perspectives, and bringing it back to our team. And lastly, but not least, on the end is Sunil Avadanam. Close enough. Thanks, Sunil. So Sunil is the president of the Eastlake Homeowners Association. A great guy, smart. He's brought a lot of fun and marketing ideas to us and just been cool to work with. He did the same thing with Eastlake, reached out and got input from them. And amazingly, everybody agrees. Common sense. We all want option A, so that was cool. And I'll let these gentlemen speak to that in a moment. So in that consensus, we then found one of the issues that I want to bring to your attention and talk a little bit about, because we think while the regional VeloWeb is a Dallas-Fort Worth-wide initiative, it does impact this particular part of Coppell in how it interfaces into these subdivisions. Since the trail system and the VeloWeb were always planned, we always planned for the South Side connector. And the VeloWeb was always architected and designed understanding where it was going to come into the city. The problems, the challenges with option A, the preferred approach, really throw a curveball into that. So if we can solve for that equation, we can then stay consistent with the original plan in the VeloWeb. What is the VeloWeb? I don't want to assume the council all knows what the VeloWeb is, or every single participant in the subdivisions. I'm not going to read this, but these are a couple of things we cut out of the Coppell Park and Rec presentations, various presentations. And basically, to shorthand this, to make it simple, I'm going to borrow their analogy, that basically the regional VeloWeb is made up of a superhighway for fast-moving bicycles. Plus, it's made up of interior trails inside of cities, and that's for just people walking and recreating, all right? And then where you connect and intersect is really your on and off ramps, okay? So this is something we all do all the time, so I'm just going to use and borrow their analogy. Now, why is this important? Because as it was originally architected, that flow of traffic coming into Coppell from the west into this northwest corner, behind the mansions at the lake, through West Haven, then through East Lake, and then Magnolia Park and beyond. That is architected to direct the high-moving traffic, but it's also architected, and so those are our on-ramps, so we have to go through these communities, and I'll show you the pictures to try to add a little clearer understanding of what I'm trying to say. Maybe it's time to get some pictures up here. Thank you. Okay. All right. So this is where the VeloWeb route goes through northern Coppell. And the large neon green snake with the dots in it, that's the fast-moving trail. That's the superhighway for bikes. You see that on the left of the screen. You see that up on the top of the screen where it's headed back up into Louisville. You see it on the right-hand side where it's headed to Carrollton and then south to Irving. Where you see the dark green lines in the center, that's where the speed trail, if you will, the freeway, is connecting to the city off-side streets, or think of our own internal Coppell trail system. And so now let me move on. I'm trying to just create the picture as quick as I can for everyone. This is a cleaner representation of the same thing, where you see the orange lines coming in from the west, and any of us that have ever been out on 2499 know that's a highway, and that's where these bikes are going to be coming from. And we've been out there with the bike packs riding on Saturdays and Sundays, and they're long-distance trail riders. When they come into Coppell, or if they're leaving Coppell on the other side, or vice versa, coming from the other direction, they have multiple options for which paths they will take. They may come through our neighborhoods. That's not the desired path the VeloWeb would like them to take. However, there is nothing stopping them. And so therefore, when these high volume or fast moving bicyclists come through our trail system, we should do everything we can to keep them moving through seamlessly and not making them move in and out and extra turns and going up deeper into neighborhoods. So let me do one more slide on this to show you a satellite view. And again, John, I'm just stealing from some of your presentation material. Plagiarism, it got me through college, so we had a lot of work tonight. As you can see over here on the left-hand side of the screen, the red line there, that's the fast-moving trail. It's coming under 121. Then it's coming in behind the mansions at the lake. I know they have a new name, but it'll always be the mansions at the lake to me. It comes back. That's where you connect with this fast-moving trail on the west side. There are counterparts on the east side to connect there as well. Now, what I have circled here is the original south path, and you see that in the lower right. This is really what we believe is the best approach, because and why A+ works better, because we are able, should they get onto our internal trails, these fast-moving bikes, this is the fastest, cleanest way to accomplish two things: move them through and give them a better experience, and number two, move them through and get them off of our trails and where they really want to go, so that we can recreate with families. All right. So I think that paints the picture good enough. I don't want to belabor this, and I don't want to make this longer than it needs to be. All right. So we have, and I also want to let you know that VeloWeb is 1,700 miles of high-speed bikes throughout DFW and about 7,300 miles of city trails. So if you're not familiar with the VeloWeb, you may want to spend some time and learn a little more about that. All right. Now, I mentioned earlier, and some of this is redundant, so I'm going to skip over it. We talked about our partnering. We developed the Neighborhood Alliance because we realized we have some common interest. I'm going to point to the center black section of this slide. You can see what some of those joint projects are. I'm not going to speak to them again, other than the third one, which we'll be back here together on a turn lane at 121 in Denton Taps. So you can mark that down. We'll be back. Okay. And then the VeloWeb, which I just addressed. So that's why we're concerned about the VeloWeb. That's the partnership we've developed. We've developed a consensus. And with that, I would like to turn this over. First, I'm going to turn this over to Deepak Giavant. Deepak will speak. He will then turn it over to Vijay to speak for the board in West Haven. And then he will turn it over to Sunil. Sunil will then turn it back over to Yvette, our vice president, to wrap up. All right. Thank you so much.
Trail, the dotted lines. Yeah, that's
this one, or
no, this is a good one.
Okay, you bet.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thank you for the opportunity. Magnolia Park, thanks for inviting us here. I don't have to introduce myself. I think Mark's done the work for me. And Mark missed one occasion in which we had coffee drinks and ice cream social, and most of you know you are part of that. We couldn't eat the ice cream. It was all melting away because we were all socializing, right? So that's it. I want to talk about the trail and the VeloWeb from a safety and a crime perspective. Now, from West Haven point of view, we've got private lakes, fishing ponds, and the trails go behind the woods. And I can tell you from January of this year, we've had about over 40 trespassers fishing and loitering. And as part of the Neighborhood Crime Watch patrol, we've been patrolling section of the West Haven Trail. And we've been successful enough in keeping them away from our resident community because they are closer to the woods, right? Now, it is my opinion that if a trail is away from the resident community, it's going to serve the best interests of the residents from a safety standpoint, right? So that's point number one, right? And we had to call CPD on a couple of occasions. And if it's going to be closer to the residents, I don't know how many times we'll have to call the CPD, right? So that's one thing. Second, if the trail has a good line of sight, right, it's good for the fast-moving traffic, right? So they don't have to brake and they don't have to serve and do that. Because we have had a couple of incidents in the West Haven Trail where bicyclists and families and children bicycling, and they've had incidents, people have got hurt. We had to render first aid. So with a good line of visibility and less bends, I think it's good. It serves the safety, right? So that's just from the data points and what we've experienced. connecting communities is an excellent initiative. Now, think about West Haven, East Lake, and Magnolia. We've been there for years, and we have not had an opportunity to work together like this. This is one of the several initiatives, like Mark was pointing out, and we are making great progress here. We are being collaborative. We are looking at each other's priorities, and we are also looking at what benefits our community and our extended neighborhood, right? So that's why we are taking this from a safety, and like Mark said, we are looking at extending the safety into East Lake and Magnolia as well. So if the A+ option that Magnolia is putting forward, if that's economical, if that fits the budget, and if council agrees, from a safety perspective, I think we'd like to support it, right? But also, I also want to echo Mark's concerns about the VeloWeb. We're talking about high-speed traffic coming in. We're talking about groups coming in. If you ever walk through West Haven, you'd see families, you'd see kids and children biking, skating, walking, strolling with their dogs. This is slow-moving traffic. This is their evening walks, their early morning jog. Consider the high-speed traffic coming through. Now, this is clashing two different types of traffic, two different communities coming together, right? So I'm sure we'll be working with CPD to address that concern and the risk of how we can safely route that traffic through, keep it away from the resident community, and kind of modulate it with the regular residents using the trails. And by the way, West Haven already, we have a trail. We have a trail that takes to Denton Tap today. But this trail, I think, is going to shorten the route to our kids going to school. So we love the trail. And if A+ is economical and it's more safer, I think we'll support that. Thank you. I'd like to call Vijay, my fellow resident from West Haven. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Vijay. I'm part of the West Haven HOA board. First of all, as far as the trail is concerned, as was Deepak and other guys mentioned, we already have a connectivity from our community right now. So whether the city puts the trail or not, it's not going to make any big impact on our community as such. But from our community perspective, the two big things what we are asking the city, even I voiced in the couple of earlier meetings as well in the last year, is one, we don't have an alternate access route to our community. Right now, everything has to go on a 121, the service road only. I request the city to consider an option, if there is possibility, to have another access road, because more than 400 families are there. If some incident has to happen on 121 service road, then all the 400 families got impacted. They can't even come out of the community. So I request the city to look for an alternative where all the 400 residents can have an alternate access, at least an emergency access road if possible. When you are building all these things, you keep that also in mind. The second one is right on the Denton Tap, right lane on the Denton Tap, which already like a couple of years back already City Council approved, but somehow the city, the project is not yet on the ground. So we request the city to consider that, because now the school's open, the whole traffic is there. It took almost like before the pandemic started, it used to take around 15 minutes just to cross that one light to go to school. You can imagine the traffic. The traffic is backed up all the way to the West Haven on the service road every day morning when all our kids are going to school. So we request that to take that as that project also on a priority to finish that ASAP. That's our request from our West Haven. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for giving the opportunity, especially to Mark and Deepak, to introducing to Mark and to the Magnolia Park HOA. I'm the president of the East Lake HOA, and I represented residents of 58 residents, and of all the 3 neighborhoods, we are the smallest. But I see more value for us in this whole park. We bought the home there, seeing the master plan. There is a connection that would come. It's been 5 years. We are still waiting. I put my son in elementary. We moved here. He's in middle. I hope he'll have it the trial sooner. I hope you don't have to wait high school. The second part is we do walk around through the trail. To get to the Andy Brown, I need to walk close to 1-2 miles before I get to the trails in the Andy Brown Park. This would bring us closer to that. And the other way we see it, the south side or north side, there is no specific opinion from East Lake neighborhood, but from the value perspective and the shade and the different options proposed by the Magnolia Park, I thank them for doing all the work for us. So where we can get the more value for that, and we can use the shade. Few points I just want to kind of cover. One is the why do we say the south side is better, not the north side? I mean, just to echo for that. In Texas heat, when we send the kids to middle school or elementary, even in the afternoons, it's completely shade. We drove it multiple times. Yes, we don't have that 800 feet missing. I request the council to consider that and build it on the south side where we can send the kids in the morning under the shade and in the afternoon they come under the shade. Thank you. Thanks.
All right, I'm back. So, just to summarize, I know we covered a lot of different aspects here. The south option for the trail connection is A+, because it is the shortest and the most direct. It is the most scenic and weather protected in both summer and winter. It is the least expensive, and it efficiently provides long-term necessary levee stabilization. And by creating the most child-oriented path, it pleases the 473 homes in the West Denton Creek Alliance. The A+ location on the south of the lake is not only best for Magnolia Park, East Lake, and West Haven, it is best for the Parks Department, the Public Works, and the City Council because it is most efficient, durable, and economical. Now, do you have any questions for any of us?
Thank you very much. Council, do you have any questions for any members that spoke tonight? John, I'm sorry, you're Councilmember John.
Thank you, Mayor. One of the questions I had was, Mr. Crandall, if I remember correctly, I think the initial estimate was substantially higher than what we are looking at right now. So I was wondering what changed from the initial estimate to the estimate that we're seeing today?
That's a good question, Councilmember. And what we had was some bids come back from contractors on one of our projects. And we've got almost a mile of trail on our, what's called the Trails of Jordan Creek and Crum. And so we looked at the unit prices, compared that to what we had originally had, and the unit prices were better than what we had. So there's been a real difficult year for cost estimating based on cement shortages, contractors overworked. It's just been difficult. So when we got good bids back, we actually lowered those numbers on not only, again, they're proportional. A and B both lowered at that point in time.
Thank you. And the other question I had was, and I actually did walk that trail as well, but of course I probably don't have the eyes that you have as well. But I thought that putting an 8-foot wide trail would require removing some of the trees, but you're saying that that's not required.
What I saw was that, 6 inches and above is kind of my triggering point for trees. There's a lot of little 2-inch, 3-inch, there's a lot of undergrowth in through there. As you could see from the drive-by video, it is a very heavily treed area, but there's no feature trees, no significant trees. It would just be cleaning up the brush and undergrowth.
And one more, sorry. And then the levy that we're talking about, you're saying that the proposal that you have is substantially structurally sound enough that it will, in essence, address the issue that the levy that we had, levy issue that we had. That's correct?
Right now, what I saw, and I don't like the word significant, it will improve the stability of that when you encapsulate it in concrete. But what we saw was just some minor erosion right along the water line on the lake. It was maybe a foot or two of just some steep banks right near the water. And you don't have a problem today, but it just looked like maybe some early signs. It may just be a short-term situation, maybe something long-term. We don't know at this point. That was really not in the initial scope of work, just something I observed as I was walking through there.
And second, I do want to say, I thank the HOA because I know that you guys have spent significant amount of time and money into this matter, and do appreciate you actually inviting us to come out there and take a walk, because that kind of made me also have a different thoughts rather than just seeing it on with the PowerPoint, but actually walking the trail actually kind of made sense as well. But I'd like to see later on as from the city staff as to what they thought about what's been proposed here as well. So again, thank you so much for your time and for the information and the visual effect that kind of gives me a better understanding of the trail system.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Neville.
First of all, I just want to say thank you guys so much for the presentation today. It's the initial presentations, I wasn't on council yet, so this is very informative to hear your opinions and thoughts, and thank you so much for your expertise coming out today. I did have a couple questions though. Specifically, you had said your initial kind of estimate was that like the B side had merits, but then when you went out there and you discovered that you liked the A plus, let's go A plus side better on that. Besides the unit price for the concrete, because of the access that you mentioned, what were some of the initial reasons why you thought the B side was better initially, and then what specifically changed your mind when you got out there? And I think walking me through those specific things help me kind of understand that perspective a little bit more.
And good question, yes. And again, the first initial meeting, I was not a very friendly engineer. I just said I don't think I like it. I like this other plan better. From an aerial map that I was looking at online in my desk, you see things in 2D, and when you get out to the site, you see things in 3D. So you're seeing the slope, the topography, you're seeing the challenges. Not only did the extra length show up once we started looking at it and walking it, and as I dug deeper into it, so specifically the length of sidewalk, of trail that was going to be required on the north side. Not only that, but it's not in a it's very curvilinear, which is kind of nice in some areas, but not necessary for bicycles. It was very curvilinear. We've got a head wall. That aerial map is not up on there. Bring that. You've got a large storm sewer discharge pipe coming into on the north side, kind of right there. See a grove of trees right below that 1134. There's a big head wall right there. We've got to get up and over and around that. It's going to hug fairly closely to the street and to an existing sidewalk there. It just, as you looked at it on the aerials, both look pretty good, and I really like the open. As an engineer, I want to go through the path of least resistance. When I started looking at it on the ground, saw the trail, walked through the trees, didn't see any featured trees, didn't see any significant removal of trees, just saw some undergrowth and cleaning up. That's what really, from an engineering standpoint as well as from just a personal standpoint, it is gorgeous through there. Just really pretty.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Council, any other questions? Yes, Councilmember Hill.
Thank you, Mayor. In your professional opinion, we know that the original path washed away. Mm-hmm. We rebuilt a new path there. What do you think its lifespan would be?
Well, and I recognize that as well. Some of the old aerials, you can go onto COG's webpage, as some of y'all may know, and it gives you 2-year increments all the way back to about 1990. Gets pretty pixelated at that, but point is that you can see some historic information. The original trail was there, washed out. That was one of my thought processes. Okay, we put it in, it washed out, let's don't repeat the problem. And that's where this erosion issue came in. That's where some of this encapsulation, possible stem wall, came into my analysis to say, okay, if we've got that significant overflow, if we've got that significant volume of overtopping of that lake. Now, since I've been here involved in this for about the past 3 or 4 months, we've had some fairly significant rainfall events, and it just didn't look like it was as big a concern as I initially thought. So can it wash out again? Possibly. From what I saw, the ground seems to be fairly well established in there. There are 2 low spots, one right by the current spillway. And as you go a little bit further west around that trail, there's another low spot in there that looks like it would then overtop in 2 locations. So that's the locations where I thought a stem wall might be a good, valid consideration. And in talking to Public Works, I don't think it's on their radar, but certainly maybe something to be considered in the future.
So you see the issue as being overwashing rather than the torrent of water coming down the Denton Creek, undercutting it.
Well, and a good point. I don't think Denton Creek, you really don't have the alignment right there in Denton Creek. It's going to wash out on the opposite side. As it comes around that curve, it's going to wash the outside curve away. As you get past Magnolia Park, that's where it may start washing on the inside. But no, it's not the erosion coming downstream. It's the erosion overtopping the lake and going into Denton Creek. That's where I think you're going to be looking at some possible just localized erosion.
Thank you.
Council, any other questions? So thank you very much for your time. To be honest with you, we receive very few citizens' input and presentations like this, so we're a little disjointed when it comes to handling these. So apologize on our part for that, but this was a very thorough presentation. Mr. Crandall, Mark, and Deepak, Vijay, Sunil, you guys, really put together a really nice presentation for us. Our process will be to take this back to the city staff. They haven't seen this before. This was first time viewed by them. And then we're going to ask them to come back and have a work session with us to discuss it in about 2 months. You've been most patient with us, and city business takes a little time, so we apologize for that. But one of the things that we try to do is we try to remember that short-term decisions that we make here today have long-term impacts and long-term consequences, and so we want to make sure that we make the right decision. And just giving us the time to do that, to work through the process, and allow our staff and our park board to look at all the options is the way that we've been very successful in doing that in the past. And just keep in mind that our goal is to make the future of Coppell the best it's ever been. And so thank you for your support in doing that.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Number 8 is our city manager's report. Mr. Lamb.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just to update you on some construction projects. Grapevine Springs Park dredging and wall continues to be worked on. The dredging is underway, Councilman Long, and should be complete within about the next 30 days. The wall concrete pour.
Mr. Lamb.
I'd almost feel offended that they don't want to hear my report.
Ready to get up?
Why don't you?
I'll wait.
Let's take a 2 minutes.
Okay.
I was going to stay if you didn't take a break.
Well, the council consensus is we're going to stay for his report.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I know we're at the end.
Hold on just one minute.
No offense.
Go ahead.
Have something actually to update, thanks to that. 2 minutes, that helped. All right, so the wall, the wall concrete pour should occur within the next week or so. So, progress is being made. To those that were here talking about how long some things take, when did you start asking me about that project? when you first got elected?
No. It's been a good 5 years.
Okay. Well, that's when we had to work through the county, as you know, and, got their shared costs and everything like that. So anyway, airline, sidewalk, and landscaping work continues the end of this month, so basically about the next 7 days they should be finished. Cambria, the northern lane pavement is nearing completion, and the south subgrade preparation should begin soon after that is finished. For the intersection improvements, signal work at Parkway and Southwestern is what's next. So, they've gotten the lanes to a point where they have to get the signal work done, so that's what's next. Demolition, if you've been at Denton Tap and Sandy Lake, you see that they're doing the demolition of the right turn lane there. And then regarding the intersection of 121 and Denton Tap for the right turn lane, it's at TxDOT now for review. So progress is being made. It's just slow. And as we discussed when we awarded the project, we'll be coming forward with a change order, so probably within about the next 60 to 90 days with that change order so that right turn lane can be constructed by the contractor that we have. Stream G6, the infamous Stream G6, the Gabion installation is going on, or Gabion installation is going on, and that project's about 40% complete. And then Beltline, late September, early October. Tell everybody that you can to stay away from South Beltline, south of Southwestern, once we start construction. So that's an update on the various construction projects that we have going on. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Item number 9 is Mayor and Council reports. The city, our administrative offices will be closed on Monday, September 6th in observation of Labor Day. And please participate in our local government and give back to your community by serving on one of our boards and commissions. We're seeking passionate individuals to be part of those boards and commissions to help guide development, provide for the future needs, regulations, and the future of Coppell in general. Applications are accepted online at coppelltx.government boards through September 13th, 2021. Item number 10, public service announcements. Do we have any public service announcements concerning the community? I see Councilmember John has raised his hand.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a question for Mike. I might have missed it because I got disconnected, but as far as the Parkway and the Denton Tap construction, I know there's a lot of parents that were concerned with kids back in school, and it seemed that it wasn't safe, but do you have an update on that?
I do know that the safety of the children is that we are working with the contractor to create a safe route. But the best thing I can do is get you something in writing tomorrow as far as what we are doing exactly for that intersection. I know it is a topic that we are very aware of and trying to be on top of the best we can.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other public service announcements? Seeing none, moving on. Item number 11, Council Committee reports concerning items of community involvement. There will be no council action or deliberation permitted. Item A, Dallas Regional Mobility Coalition. Councilmember Don Carroll.
Thank you, Mayor. So the August meeting earlier this month was a relatively routine meeting. We simply went through a lot of agency reports from organizations such as TxDOT, Regional Transportation Council, DART, DCTA, Texas Central Railway, and NTTA. We did get an update on the special session going on in Austin. Of course, at the beginning of August, there had not really been anything that had happened because of the quorum issue they were having. And the second session had been announced, so there wasn't too much to update from there. There was also a brief update on the pending federal legislation, the infrastructure bill that is pending, and it was summarized. There were $273 billion in that bill for highways, another 3.3 for bridges that needed to be redone, $3.3 billion for bridges that needed to be redone, and even $70 billion for public transportation. So significant funds in that infrastructure bill that if it passes in the current form, there'll be an eye on how that money gets distributed to all the states in the coming weeks and months. One interesting note from the federal legislation is that for every dollar that Texas sends to DC, we actually reap more dollars in return based on population and needs that we have in Texas. So that's an interesting. I don't know, if everybody in the country thinks that is the most fair way to do it, but it was an interesting note that they had from that update. There'll be a lot of attention just in the coming weeks as that legislation moves through Congress and sort of see how it impacts Texas, and then even more specifically on North Texas. The rest of our DRMC meeting was just on routine annual business. I will make one notable overarching message to the group, was that as each jurisdiction has transportation projects that are in the queue, that we all need to be ready and prepared to have those projects ready to go. So when our number comes up and the funding appears, we are ready to start executing and don't get bumped from the list. So that was stressed for many of the jurisdictions. I don't know how crucial that is for Coppell at this moment compared to some of the other jurisdictions that were in attendance, but that was a notable call out. So that is my recap from the meeting this month.
Thank you very much. Item B is a report on the Woven Health Clinic. Councilmember Hill.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. I received this update from the Director Lisa Rigby with Woven Health Clinic. And as you can imagine, the clinic is currently seeing a significant increase in COVID positive patients. And these patients are in the younger range, relatively, 30 to 50-year-old range, rather than being the older folks that we were seeing early on. Over 90% of these people are unvaccinated, and they had seen the demand for vaccinations peak at the clinic in May, and then it's dwindled to extremely low levels with only a slight increase in the demand for vaccinations as we have started to see these increase in positive cases. Recently, they opened a second Woven Healthcare Clinic in North Carrollton to serve the residents in that area. So they were excited about that. Woven recently expanded their mental health services through a partnership with North Dallas Shared Ministry. Woven Health now has a full-time behavioral health specialist on site at the ministry. Upcoming in November, on Friday the 12th at noon, the clinic is holding their virtual awards ceremony fundraiser, with the theme being changing the future for mental health care. Everyone is invited and encouraged to attend. And for information, you can go to wovenhealth.org. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Item C is a report on MetroCrest services. Councilmember Matthew.
Thank you, Mayor. I have 4 things to report. One is the pantry. The MetroCrest is seeing a surge in pantry visits, now at over 600 families each week. That's 3 times pre-pandemic levels. So they believe it's due to school is starting back, younger students at home with the remote learning, not receiving school food, and that impact, the increase the COVID cases are having on those they serve. The loss of work hours impacts a low-income family's ability to purchase food and pay for the rent. The next one is they are looking for more volunteers. So the slots used to fill out quickly, now they are empty. So they are looking for volunteers to participate in this, in their resale store as well as their food pantry place. And they continue to provide rent assistance, and it's leveling off, but they are still seeing a continued request for rent assistance, including Coppell residents. Jobs, they are seeing more people seeking employment than ever, and they assisted over 4,000 clients looking to improve their current job or find a job, while quality jobs, which means livable wage with the benefits, are still hard to find. 221 of their clients have found meaningful jobs this year. I also want to mention the Metrocast CEO, Tracy Boings on the Fox News Today, Channel 4, and he was advocating for, what is it called, Let's Roll Toilet Paper Challenge. It's a cool thing they are doing. They're looking for 100,000 toilet paper rolls. They achieved about 50,000, so they're still looking for 50,000 more. They are having a drive-through event on Thursday, so if any of you are interested in contributing or donating, I should say, the toilet roll, please go through their facility in Farmers Branch, and they are accepting the toilet rolls. With that, that's all my report. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, and I apologize. I just realized that my agenda was off the schedule from everybody else's, so I apologize for that. I was wondering why everybody was up here buzzing, and I was following my list here, so sorry about that. We already did do item number 11. Item number 12 is necessary action from executive session. We had no executive session, therefore there is nothing there. And item number 13, there being no further business before this council, we are adjourned at 8:41 p.m. Thank you. Got it.